always keep an eye on it.
All right, hi everybody. Good evening. My name is Marc Brazeau. I'm the founder of Food and Farm Discussion Lab, which we were just discussing is a little food systems think tank for the people. We don't produce white papers. We try to produce tools and discussions for journalists and everyday people going about their business trying to figure this stuff out. Originally, the title of this talk was going to be An Ecomodernist Food Manifesto or something like that. And I was thinking, well, I'm just talking to skeptics. Let's do something a little more skeptical related. So what I'm going to try to do is lay out kind of a set of criteria and questions, threshold questions that I've asked, that I've developed over the last 5, 6, 7 years of trying to figure this stuff out to decide whether I think something that somebody's proposing is significant. Can it scale? Can it take on? Will this matter? And within that I'm going to try to lay out a sketch of what I think an eco-modernist or an agro-modernist future food system, what the components of that might look like. Sum things up in 2 quick little witty aphorisms. Nothing is natural about farming. Mimicking nature just has a lot less, it's a lot less important. There's a lot less value in mimicking nature in agriculture than kind of the common zeitgeist of the last 10 years has led people to believe. And not everything that feels sustainable actually is sustainable. Just because something seems like it should be sustainable or kind of has the aesthetic sense of being sustainable doesn't mean it's really lowering impacts, the environmental footprint in relationship to more intensive, sometimes more industrial, mechanized, technological approaches. So everybody here familiar with the term ecomodernism? Now, that came up a number of years ago. Michael Schellenbrenner and Ted Nordhaus were kind of spearheaded the movement of about a dozen environmentalists. They're coming out of traditional environmental groups and have become somewhat disillusioned with the approach. The approaches seem more ideological. They weren't evidence-based always. They weren't metrics-based. And one of the things that the central kind of theme is the idea that instead of trying to harmonize with nature, to really reduce the impacts of human activity, it's more often better to intensify technologically and make more room for nature. So if we, like the most obvious example, you move more people into cities. There's nothing more unnatural than a city, right? But the more people live in cities and the less in suburbs, the more room there is for forests and marshes and rivers and lakes, right? So this leads to looking at things like nuclear energy, biotech breeding, and agriculture. And that more often than not, we can lower our footprint by intensifying technologically instead of trying to reduce our technological, trying to do things in less technological ways. Usually ends up taking up more space. So rewilding and giving more room back to nature instead of trying to make civilization more like nature is a core theme. In the food systems, biotech, GMOs, two early success stories. The first two traits that were introduced into agriculture via biotech, and traits refers to just a property to give, disease resistance, insect resistance, non-burning, apple, what have you. The first two were BT corn. I think BT corn came before Roundup Ready. BT is a trait that confers insect resistance on any plant that it's introduced into. So what they did was they took these proteins that are produced by Bacillus thuringiensis. It's a soil bacteria that kills types of insects that eat corn and cotton were the main two crops. So the caterpillar, the corn borer, the weevil starts eating the plant. The protein goes into their gut, explodes their gut. The insect dies, the plant continues to live. No need to apply insecticides. This bacteria, BT, has been used in organic farming for decades. It's completely safe to humans and mammals. So the result in corn, you can see here, it's continued. There's been some resistance and it's popped back up. It's been about level. Insecticide use is reduced tenfold. If it was 10, now it's at a 1, as the BT trait was taken up. And then I should have said, I think these are two, and you start talking about GMOs, a lot of people go, oh, I think GMOs could be useful, but I'm not crazy about them being used to, put insecticides in food, and I'm not crazy about the idea of, breeding plants so you can spray more herbicides on them. And advocates of biotech get defensive, and sometimes they try to change the subject, they start having a hard time. I say no, go right in. These are the two most impactful innovations in agriculture in the last 30 years. 90% decrease in insecticide use in corn. It's similar in cotton. And we're going to get to this. Corn is grown on 90 million acres in the U.S. I forget what cotton is because I mostly look at food. Cotton's got to be 20, 30 million, 15, I don't know. It's a lot. It's a big footprint. So that's huge. The second trait was Roundup resistance, herbicide tolerance. This allows you to spray the herbicide on the plant. The crop, the weeds die, the crop doesn't. The crop thrives. Weed control is the #1 problem for all farmers. It's their biggest resource, and weeds steal resources from the crops. This is one of the things that people who aren't involved in agriculture don't really get at a gut level. If you're watering a field and you have weeds, and if it's irrigated water, that water is precious, right? That water is going into a weed that confers no value. If you're fertilizing your field with nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, and the weeds are sucking that up, those are precious resources that are going into weed. The tractor pass, using all that fuel, all gone, eaten up by these weeds. So there's that. The other thing, other thing to understand is Roundup, the reason why Roundup was chosen is it's the least impactful least toxic herbicide out of the whole toolkit, which is why it's like we could use that instead of these other 5 that will lower our environmental impacts. So you don't get the massive decrease in herbicide use that you saw in insecticide use. This is pounds per acre, and in soybeans it's gone up. But it's swapping out with different herbicides, so you can see the relative toxicity dropping and then stabilizing. That's big. And again, corn, 90 million acres. Soybeans, 60 million acres. It's massive. Organic farming. Anybody want to guess if corn is 90 million and soybeans, conventional, are 60 million? Anybody want to guess how many million acres of organic farming is happening in the U.S.?
Less than 1.
It's 2.5 million. It's tiny. So even, like, we'll get to that. The other thing that herbicide-tolerant crops allowed was a practice called no-till and conventional tillage, which means one way of controlling weeds is to plow your field, break up that growth cycle. If you don't have to do that, you can leave your soil structure intact. Tillage does a number of things. One, you turn the soil, carbon, reactive nitrogen are released as greenhouse gases. We don't think of that as pollution to till a field. Who would think of that as pollution? Just plowing the field. But it is, if you're worried about global warming. It cuts down on erosion. It keeps you hold water better, so it lowers your irrigation costs. It does, it's again, one of the most impactful innovations in agriculture in the last 30 years. So, I'm going to try to get through all this in 45 minutes. I have, like we said, a 6-hour talk planned. That's your introduction to ecomodernism. So, the last 10 years, innovation in the food system has been a big topic. There's always some new farmers markets, vertical farms. I can't even keep track of, there's always some new next best thing. So we're going to look at the kind of algorithm I've developed to try to assess. I want to help you as news consumers, citizens, voters, try to assess this barrage of information. Number one, we want to, if somebody's proposing something as a, this is going to revolutionize feeding the world, we want to go like, well, is it going to address a major challenge? So we're going to look, there's a movement to lawns into food. Everybody get rid of your lawn, plant a garden. It's a lovely idea, great idea. I encourage everybody to do it. But at the end, maybe we'll look at what the major challenges are and assess, is something like that really going to address any of the major challenges? And I'm a horrible human being. I forgot to put the footnote here of the paper this is from. But this is a paper from just a couple years ago. It was a global food systems paper. Some of the top researchers looked at leverage points for improving food systems to deal with the major issues. And once they identified for the U.S. is irrigation and water consumption, excess nitrogen use, excess phosphorus use, and reactive nitrogen emissions. In Brazil, it's the deforestation of the rainforest, and similar problems around the world, a little different mix depending on where you are. I'm going to try to mostly focus on the U.S. because that's what we have some impact on. will spill into some other issues. So these are the 6 that I am always considering. Everything else to me is secondary. Greenhouse gas emissions. This is really 2, nutrient management and the nutrient cycle. So nutrient management is how a farmer manages their use of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, mostly nitrogen and phosphorus. So are they using as little as possible to get the best yield? Because there's a ton of energy used to produce synthetic nitrogen. Phosphorus is mined, and there are limited supplies. We can run out someday. So you want to manage them, and then you don't want them running into streams, and then into brooks, and then into rivers, and then into the Des Moines water system, and then into the Gulf of Mexico, and turning the Gulf of Mexico into a giant lily pad. Soil health is big. We've lost tons, disconcertingly large amounts of topsoil. A lot of soil that we do have has been depleted of organic matter and nutrients. Water conservation and management. We have like the Oklahoma, we had the drought in California, and there's a saying that, what is it? I need a drink. A shortage of rain is a natural phenomenon. A drought is man-made, which is overstating a little bit, but generally a drought happens because you haven't been managing your water supply in advance of a shortage of rain. Even more concerning, really, than water use issues, I mean, it's to us at the West, whether it's California or what's the big river through the Grand Canyon down into Arizona? Colorado River. Huge water management issues. But the big one to me is the Oklahoma aquifer under massive amounts in the Midwest. When that goes dry, bingo, it's game over, lights out for that part of the country. And we are not gotten our water use efficient enough, so that's at a rate of refresh where it's going back up, it's still going back down. Land use deforestation, rewilding is a big one that people aren't involved in ag, and people in general, even environmentalists, thinking about other issues, have a hard time really internalizing land is an input, right? Every acre you use, if I can grow, round numbers, 100 bushels on an acre versus 50 bushels on an acre, now I only need 1 acre to get 100 bushels instead of 2 acres. So I can have 1 acre of corn and 1 acre of forest, right? That's a simple model, but that's the basic idea. So you want to stop deforestation, if possible. It would be great to rewild. And actually, the footprint of agriculture in America is slightly smaller than it was like 30, 40 years ago. Despite the fact that, it's smaller than I think it was in 1970. Population was what, 200 million? 150, 200 million? In 1970 we're at 320 now. That's intensification, right? That's the fruits of technological intensification. That didn't shrink the footprint of ag while feeding another 50% of people, citizens, and increasing exports by making farming more like nature. We just squeezed every bit we could out of every acre. And food waste is another, I'm going to touch on that tangentially. That doesn't touch so much on kind of agro-modernist themes, but it's massive. It may be the most important variable of all. It's like energy. You can only efficiency your way or build capacity your way so much when mostly, we're wasting something on the order of 40% of food ends up in the landfill or plowed under in this country. There's no innovation that could match cutting food waste by half in terms of environmental impact. But that's the devil's, that's a wicked, it's a borderline wicked problem. I mean, there's an old joke among academic economists. The graduate student says to the professor, "Oh, there's a $20 bill on the sidewalk." The professor doesn't look down, he says, "That's impossible. If there's a $20 bill, somebody would have picked it up by now." Like, food waste, there are people losing money on food waste. If it was easy to fix, we would have fixed it by now. It's incredibly hard for 20 reasons plus 20 more. Can this problem scale in a significant way? That's massively important. The reason why I wanted to compare organic agriculture, organic farming in America, 2.5 million acres. They're still trying to figure out no-till. Organic farmers mostly control their weeds by plowing their fields. Organic does a lot right about their soil, and they, on average, have better soil health than the average conventional farmer. But tillage is a problem. You get wind erosion, water erosion, breaks up soil structure, you get all the greenhouse gas emissions, blah, blah, blah. They've had no-till on a mass scale in conventional for 20 years because of the GMO soy and corn that allows for no-till. They're still trying to figure out, there are researchers working on this problem because it's important in agriculture and organic. But it's not going to be adopted by on all 2.5 million. Best case scenario, 100% adoption on every acre. It's still only 2.5 million acres of cropland. Meanwhile, when we saw 40% in soybeans on conservation tillage, that's what, 35 million acres? One innovation, boom. So, how can things scale? One is you pick a big stage, right? If you can make commodity corn farming more sustainable, you can argue all day whether we should be growing so much corn or not. It doesn't matter. That's how much we're growing. So, and I'm going to talk about some ways that we can produce that amount in ways that would improve the impact effect. But the biggest thing in agriculture you can do is make corn production more sustainable. Does it solve an economic problem? If this doesn't put money in somebody's pocket, if there's not an incentive to make this go, it's not going to scale. I had an example today of like a good idea that would be great, except like there's no it's one of the reasons why organic farming is still like, I was a chef before, I was a chef before I did this. I've done a couple of things. I was trying to figure out. So I've been paying attention, in the kind of restaurants I worked at, it's all local, organic, free-range chicken. So I've been paying attention to this stuff for a long time. I've been told organic is growing at 10% a year every year for the past 20 years. Well, anybody knows that anything about compounding interest, you know, if it's been doing that, it'd cover the Earth and the Moon and Mars and Venus by now. It constitutes 0.6% of acreage in the U.S. It is stalled out, and it's like, at a certain level, organic farming doesn't solve any economic problems for farmers. It solves a problem for consumers who want a sense, either a sense of lowering their impact, or cleaner food, or you know, more authentic food, or whatever. But there's apparently a ceiling to that, and it never solved any problems for farmers. It created economic problems for farmers. That's why it costs more. So that's why it doesn't scale. Does it require a larger social reform in order to succeed on its own? This occurred to me when Vladimir Putin, I think it was because he invaded Crimea or Ukraine, the EU put sanctions on him, so he put sanctions on them and stopped importing milk from Europe. Well then, Russian cheesemakers couldn't make cheese. And he had some complicated fix, bureaucratic fix, to fix that. Like the simple problem was going to be fixed, like there are bureaucrats who got money, they decided which farmers to get how much money, you know, this whole Rube Goldberg system, rife with, like, if the simple problem requires, you know, like Michael Pollan, we should include the full cost of externalities in our food. So food should be more expensive. And people go, well, what about low-income people? Well, you know, we need to fight poverty and raise wage, you know, like we need to raise the minimum wage and bring back unions and, you know, like 12 other things that we do not have the political will to do by any stretch of the imagination. So if your little reform needs a much bigger reform in order to work, my guess is it's not going to kind of get wings and take off. So let's look at scale a little bit. Large conventional farms, 638 million acres. It's a fairly arbitrary definition of a large farm. I picked 500 acres. In commodity crops, that's still considered a small farm. And if you're grazing, that's small. A better measure would have been by income, but like the drunk looking for his, you know, keys under the lamp. This is the data I had, so it's 500 acres is a big farm, smaller is 273 million acres is a small conventional farm. Organic farms bigger than 500 acres, 1.5 million acres, small organic, 1 million. I look at this and I think, like, when you read the New York Times about reforming the food system, making it more sustainable, you would think that organic makes up like 30% of all agriculture in the US. It's 0.6%. Why are we having a discussion about how to make these bigger? Let's double them. Who cares? Let's make this and this more sustainable. If we make this 10% more sustainable, that's a much bigger deal than doubling this, even if I thought organic was more sustainable, which I don't. But even granting that, double it. I don't care. 10% better. Right there. That's the grail. Crop acreage. So again, when we're talking about farming, you probably think of the, maybe like, I used to flash on maybe the produce section at the grocery store, or, you know, a farm outside, a CSA outside of Portland where I live that, You know, they drop off a box with 45 different vegetables and 10 I've never heard of, and 3, I'll eat anything, I still won't eat them. So, this is soybeans, forage, corn, hay, wheat. So, 65 million. This corn just for food. And again, I fudged the number. It's hard to really break it out. They say 40% of corn goes into ethanol. So I just use that. I've had the economists from the Corn Growers Association bitch at me because a lot of that then comes back and is fed to livestock after they make it. So whatever, doesn't matter whether it's here or here. It's a lot bigger than this. This is orchards, 5 million acres, 4 million acres of vegetables. All vegetables in the US, 4 million acres. Canola, beans, beets, berries. I don't know why beets get their own
Sugar.
Sugar, oh yeah, sugar.
Oh yeah, sugar, those aren't vegetable beets, those are sugar beets. So the beets are probably down here again. Also, we did this a couple of months ago. When I looked at it again today, I was like, forage and hay. I'm not really clear why those are broken. I sort of know. I don't understand it well enough to explain it to you. You probably don't care or need to know. Potatoes, 1 million acres. Sweet corn, lettuce, canned tomatoes, and then onions, and it drops off. I mean, carrots, you think they're in everything. Onions, onions are in everything. This is 250,000 acres right here. That's 175,000 acres of onions. They're in every freaking thing I eat all day long. So when you're talking about farming, you're talking about this. If you're talking about making farming sustainable, you're talking about this, by and large. Frustratingly, like, there's been a BT potato for like a decade or more that would allow you to grow potatoes without insecticides or much less insecticides. To do that, who do you need on your side? You need McDonald's. McDonald's wouldn't do it because they didn't want to have the discussion with their customers. And it takes a lot of insecticides to grow potatoes because potatoes don't rotate well with other crops. They just grow, like Maine, Idaho, they grow potatoes. Nothing else grows there, you're stuck with potatoes. So you can't break up the pest cycle by just moving in another crop. So they just